Sam Hare was my son. He was our only child, so we focused all our attention on Sam. He got out of the military. He was going to college. Things were looking good until the day I found Julie's body in Sam's apartment.
Costa Mesa 911.
There's a body in my son's apartment.
There's a what?
A body, a dead body.
A dead body?
It was terrifying to hear what happened to her.
On the back of her sweatshirt was "F you, she's all yours."
I said, Sam could not have done this. Did he take off? Was he kidnapped? I don't know.
The suspect had months and months to plan this out. It was certainly premeditated.
There is a level of desensitization, a level of inhumanity that really screams serial killer type of crime.
He hatched this plot to murder two totally innocent human beings. This was among the worst, most depraved, evil murders I have ever prosecuted in my 26 years as a DA.
It's another sun-kissed spring day in Costa Mesa, California, where 26-year-old Orange Coast College student Sam Hare plans to spend the weekend with his parents, who live nearby in Anaheim Hills.
Sam was supposed to come over our house for the weekend. He never showed up Friday evening, and we tried calling, no answer. I wasn't concerned that much, him being a young man, going out, figured he forgot to call. Then Saturday, we didn't hear from him all day. We were worried about him. I had the key to Sam's apartment. So Saturday evening, I went over there, got there about 9 o'clock. I knocked at the door, no answer. I opened it, turned on the lights. Everything was spotless. Then I went into the bedroom. I saw a woman. When I touched her, she was cold. I could see she was dead. Her head was down, her face was down in dried blood. So obviously I was stunned. What happened? I called 911 immediately.
Costa Mesa 911.
There's a body in my son's apartment.
There's a what?
A body, a dead body.
A dead body?
I did not know who it was because I never turned her around. I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea.
Do you know where your son is?
No, I don't. I don't.
Within a couple of minutes, Costa Mesa police officers arrived at the scene, along with emergency personnel.
They confirmed there is a deceased female in the bedroom, indicating a possible crime scene.
With Steve Hare on his way to the station for questioning, police take a closer look at the crime scene, beginning with the victim.
She appeared to be a young Asian woman. You could tell that she had severe head trauma, apparently shot in the head, but because of her long black hair, there was no way of knowing the nature of the wounds. If it was one shot or two that penetrated, there's a million forensic mysteries at that point just looking at her.
Her pants seemed to be pulled down and cut with scissors.
Written on the back of her sweatshirt was "F you, she's all yours." So that looks like a sexual assault. It looks like some sort of jealous rage. When police searched Sam's apartment, they couldn't find his passport. His ID was missing, his wallet was missing, and they didn't know where his car was. There were no shell casings found, and there was no firearm found. On the surface, it looks like Sam Hare was in the wind, on the run.
The crime scene indicated that Sam Hare possibly either sexually assaulted or attempted to sexually assault this person.
When the cops first begin investigating this case, detectives are well-versed on motive. And love is a strong motivator. And it's not a far leap to suspect that Sam ended up killing the target of his love.
However, because of what's written on her sweatshirt, it could be revenge against Sam or against somebody else, like maybe a jilted lover shot and killed her. But the thought process and the mindset is Sam Hare is a murder suspect. In the apartment during their investigation, they find a purse in the kitchen.
When they got into the person, they looked. Her name was Julie Kibuishi. She was a 23-year-old OCC student studying fashion design.
They also find her cell phone within the apartment as well.
Once police identify the victim as Julie Kibuishi, they immediately notify her family, and news of her tragic death begins to spread.
I had never known anybody that had passed away from being murdered. She wasn't like doing anything nefarious. Like, she had a job, she went to school. She was like a really smart person. It makes no sense. Like, there's just no reason for this to have happened to her. I felt terrible for Julie's family. She was super close with her family.
For June Kibuishi, Julie's mom, it was just absolutely heartbreaking because her daughter had been taken from her, but she didn't know why.
Julie and I were both dancers. We danced at dance studios. We went to the same performing arts high school for dance. We danced at college together. If, you needed something, she would be there for you. I just wanted justice for my friend.
While Julie's friends and family grapple with the devastating news, detectives interview Steve Hare at the station.
When I found out it was Julie, I said, Sam could not have done this because Julie was a friend of Sam and a couple of the other guys at the apartment complex.
Steve Hare says Julie was also Sam's tutor in an anthropology class they were taking.
I had met Julie one time at Sam's apartment. She was a charming, enthusiastic, bubbly young woman. And I asked Sam, I said, Sam, is there anything between you? She said, Dad, there's nothing between Julie and myself. She's like a kid sister to me.
Parents often, I think, don't know what their kids are up to, especially in a romantic context. But Steve Hare was insistent that they weren't dating each other. This was his tutor. This was a friend.
Detectives take note of this information, but then Steve reveals an alarming detail about Sam's past.
Sam's background came up very quickly, that he had been charged with a murder himself towards the end of high school in the city of Los Angeles. It essentially was a gang murder of a young man that Sam was with when he was attacked by a rival gang. And the theory was that Sam had set this young man up, but the jury acquitted Sam of all wrongdoing. I didn't know what to make of it at that point.
Despite his son's troubled past, Steve tells investigators that Sam made an earnest effort to turn his life around.
In 2006, Sam enlisted in the Army. And for 15 months, Sam was stationed in Afghanistan, in a very volatile area. Sam matured immensely when he was in the military. It did give Sam a purpose and give him focus, but he would wake up at night from PTSD. But that's normal, especially from combat. Sam got out of the military July of 2009, and he was doing quite well. He started college September of 2009. Things were looking good until the day I found Julie's body in Sam's apartment.
Mr. Hare did not believe his son was the primary suspect in Julie's death. However, everything else indicates Sam Hare could be the suspect.
He's a combat veteran, suffering from PTSD, and he also has had a significant scrape with the law where he was accused of murder in his own right, but he was acquitted. All of that begins to paint a picture of somebody who might actually be capable of doing something like this.
A bulletin is subsequently issued looking for Sam and his whereabouts.
All the news stations put his picture on there and saying, prime suspect. It was one hell of a nightmare.
Long Beach gets their SWAT team together. There's a helicopter in the air.
Somebody had come back after she had been dead for several hours and cut her jeans off.
This monster had no problem creating a plan that required a second murder.
When I had gotten home after being questioned by the police, I had to break the news to his mom, Raquel. She was shocked. And the first thing you worry about is, where's my boy? What's going on? I'm thinking something happened to Sam as well. Didn't know what. Did he take off? Was he kidnapped? I don't know. No one knew where Sam was.
When I heard that he's missing and they found a dead woman in his apartment, I said, I'm sorry, what? Like, you know, it's complete shock and your brain doesn't know how to process what it's hearing. But I was 100% certain that he didn't do this to this woman.
Costa Mesa police have released a photo and vehicle description hoping to locate a 26-year-old man.
Neighbors say his bicycle sits outside his apartment, but his vehicle is gone.
The police are asking for your help in finding him.
While the search for Sam continues, police gain access to Julie Kibuishi's phone, which was found at the crime scene, and quickly uncover her final communications.
It became pretty clear that she stopped talking to people on Friday night. And you see this exchange from Sam's phone saying, I really need a friend tonight. Please, no sex. I just need somebody to talk to about some family problems that he was having. And the response was, ew, Sam. We're like bro and sis, of course no sex. Which was corroborative of what Steve Hare was telling detectives. And then detectives started interviewing their mutual friends. And their friends started saying the same thing. Like, this lover's quarrel makes no sense because they weren't lovers. That this was a purely platonic relationship.
Police now begin canvassing the apartment complex to gather more information from fellow residents about Sam's potential whereabouts and actions before the murder.
And among the people they interviewed was a man named Daniel Wozniak and a woman named Rachel Buffett, who was his fiancée. They learned that Dan and Rachel were friends with Sam, at least to some degree, and also Julie. Wozniak told detectives that he'd seen Sam on Friday. And essentially what he said was that Sam was going to spend some time with his parents that weekend. He did say that he mentioned having some problems with his family, which appeared to corroborate the text messages that were found on Julie Kibuishi's phone.
But in interviewing Steve Hare, Sam's dad, there was no indication whatsoever there were family problems between Sam and anybody else.
There are no family problems with Sam and ourselves. We were as close can be.
Maybe the family isn't aware that he's having some issues at home, but they were very, very insistent and pretty persuasive that that also made no sense. It became pretty clear that some of the puzzle pieces on this case did not fit. But Wozniak and also Rachel Buffett, his fiancée, said that they last saw Sam get into a black Mazda with a young man wearing a baseball cap.
While police attempt to track down additional information on the black Mazda, an autopsy is performed. The results are surprising.
At the crime scene, there was no way of knowing how many times she'd been shot in the head because of her hair. What they were able to determine very clearly was that Julie had been shot twice in the head, each round probably fatal. Also, there had been no sexual assault.
Just because there's no evidence of sexual assault doesn't mean that that wasn't at least attempted by whoever killed Julie, but it didn't occur based on the autopsy examination.
Another thing that was really interesting about it is she had what's known as blanching on her buttocks. Blanching are just white areas of skin, usually caused by pressure. And that usually takes several hours for blanching to break in. But we had blanching on the upper part of her body, specifically her buttocks area, and it was in the shape of the pockets of her jeans.
This indicates that Julie was laying on her back with her jeans on after she was killed.
It means that somebody had come back after she had been dead for several hours, staged the scene, and cut her jeans off. And this soon morphed into something far more diabolical.
After receiving the autopsy results, police now know Julie Kibuishi was shot twice in the head, and then hours later, someone staged the scene to make it look like a sexual assault. While their prime suspect, Sam Hare, remains missing, both police and his father, Steve, are desperate to find him.
We had to find Sam. I had to find Sam. That's my son.
So as the detectives are forming the official investigation, Steve Hare is also monitoring Sam's bank account. He was calling Sam's friends. That sometimes can complicate a murder investigation. In this case, it helped because the first real clue we got was the use of Sam's ATM card in Long Beach.
I saw on Saturday, 22nd, there was a withdrawal of $400. On Sunday, I think it went to $500 withdrawn. And also, there's a charge of pizza called Echo's Pizza. The money's being taken out of one bank in Long Beach, and this Echo's Pizza is within very close to that bank.
Steve immediately notifies police about Sam's bank records.
They then contact the bank, obtain surveillance footage to see who this individual is.
And it was not Samuel Hare. Detectives had no idea who this person was that was taking the money out of Sam's account.
No one close to Sam can identify the young man either.
At this point in the investigation, Sam's in the wind. We don't know where he is, don't know where his car is, his passport's missing. So the next thought was, well, Sam must have some sort of confederate here who's helping him take money out of his own account.
To gather more information, investigators quickly focus on the charges from Echo's Pizza.
Detectives make contact with this pizza parlor to find out who's making these purchases, which leads them back to a residence in the city of Long Beach. Costa Mesa police then make contact with the Long Beach Police Department and ask for their assistance.
The police, you know, they've got a guy on the loose, a combat vet, and God only knows what kind of mental condition, who very well may be armed and dangerous, and that's a scary thing.
So Long Beach gets their SWAT team together. There's a helicopter in the air.
They hit this house, and when they go in, I was expecting that Sam Hare would be sitting on a couch and sending somebody out to the ATM because he was laying low. And instead, what they find is a 16-year-old kid named Wesley Freilich sitting inside his mom's house, and he immediately tells police he got the ATM card from another man that he used to work in plays with, and that man's name was Daniel Wozniak. This was obviously pretty big news to detectives who had only recently talked to Daniel Wozniak, Sam Hare's neighbor, who didn't tell them anything about having Sam's ATM card.
Police press Wesley for more details about Daniel and the ATM card.
Wesley said that Daniel Wozniak approached him and said that he was working for a bail bondsman and that he needed his help. He basically says that when people skip out on their bail, we have access to their bank accounts to get the money.
Dan Wozniak gave him this ATM card, explaining to him that he was withdrawing the funds to get money paid back to him from Sam.
He says that you're doing your public service, and Wozniak could pay him a small fee for using the ATM machine, and that he could also use the card to order pizzas. You know, it was obvious to everybody at that moment that Wesley, who's terrified, has been duped. And it appeared that Daniel Wozniak has lied to them about something very important, and that's the existence of this ATM card.
After speaking with Wesley, investigators quickly dig into Daniel Wozniak's background.
They learned that he grew up in a nice family in Long Beach, went to good schools, and that he was a community theater actor. They learned that he had a DUI from the year before, and then he never took care of it. So he never showed up to court, so there's a bench warrant out. And now they learned that he has lied to them about something very important. So they need to get to the bottom of that immediately.
Detectives contact Daniel Wozniak and ask if he will come down to the station to answer a few questions.
And his response was, yeah, I can't come down. I got my bachelor party tonight at a place called Tsunami Sushi in Huntington Beach. So you can imagine how that goes over with a bunch of homicide detectives, you know, not very well. So they go and they crash his bachelor party, as they should, and they arrest him for the lies that he told them in the previous interview. That's obstruction of justice. That's a crime in the state of California. They take him to the Costa Mesa Police Department, and they sit Daniel Wozniak down for an interview.
You want to talk to me about what happened, why you're here and everything? Yes. Okay.
So I lied, and I'm sorry for lying.
How did you lie?
The last time I saw Sam was on Friday at 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Okay.
The last time I saw Sam was Saturday. I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Four days into the investigation of Julie Kibuishi's murder, Costa Mesa police arrest Daniel Wozniak, and he immediately admits to lying during his first interview. Now he says he actually saw Sam Hare the day after Julie was killed.
I got a knock on my door. I want to say it was about 8:30 in the morning. This was on Saturday morning. Correct. Okay. Opened the door, it was Sam. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? Everything good? He's like, not good. He's like, I can't talk about it here. We need to get the out of here.
He says, I drove him to the Los Alamitos military base so that he would have some place to think.
Sam said, I killed Julie. I said, why the did you do that? What happened? He's like, I don't know. I went back, I was on my computer.
Sam indicates to him that he was looking at pictures of Julie, thus initiating the text for her to come over to his apartment to meet up with him.
He's like, I got a gun. It was a black market gun that he said that he had, that he kept in his safe. And she came over and he asked for sex. He was pretty up. He said no, and then he just shot her. He said, I can't go away for this, so you need to help me.
Wozniak then tells police that part of this scheme of withdrawing the money was for Sam to then escape.
He's like, I have about $16,000, $17,000 in the bank. And I can't go into a bank to actually, so I need you to do this for me, and I'll help you out in any way, shape, or form. I was short about $2,000 in the beginning. So I said, okay.
He dropped him off at this mall in Long Beach, put Wesley up to it. He's a juvenile, so juveniles have to be treated differently.
So we needed someone underage, so I contacted one of my theater buddies. His name is Wesley, which I got involved. He has nothing to do with anything else.
He says, I don't know where Sam is now, and, you know, I'm sorry that I lied.
Do you know if Sam has been in contact with anybody else?
He did say he was having some family problems.
What kind of family problems?
He did not say it because I was going through the stress of all money things, so that's all that I know about that.
You never got any money to him, right?
Yeah. Not yet, no.
Right. So where's all the money in?
Most of it's spent.
His interview, he was very confident, very matter of fact, but during the investigation, Steve Hare and Raquel Hare were insistent that they weren't having any family problems. And these are really experienced homicide investigators, and they remain suspicious. And at one point, they perform what's known as a ruse. It's a completely legitimate investigative technique where they take his DNA, they swab his DNA. You know, a lot of people have watched CSI and they think that DNA comes back in like 5 minutes. And in reality, on a very rushed job, it's going to take a couple of weeks. And Wozniak didn't know that.
What we're going to do is, this is a swab. I guess swab to eliminate you. It's in your best interest.
Yes,
And they give him the bad news that his DNA is found on Julie's body, to see what he would say.
How'd your DNA get on her?
And at that point, Wozniak changed his story substantially.
Okay, fine. You know what? He didn't come down. He came down and said, help me. I went upstairs, and yes, I saw the goddamn body. Is that what you want to hear?
No, we want to hear the truth.
That is the truth.
Okay, then tell us what happened. How did that play out? What did you see?
Saw 2 gunshots in her head.
Now, that was a very significant moment in the investigation because every single person that had been to the crime scene knew there was no way you could tell how many holes were in her head. It was impossible.
We were all there and processed that crime scene. How many bullet wounds did you see?
That's it.
How many did you see?
I don't see any.
I saw maybe what I thought might be 1. So where were the 2 bullet wounds?
I don't know. Sam said he shot her twice.
Okay.
And
But
I didn't see.
You just told us you saw 2 bullet wounds. You were standing on them.
No. Okay.
No,
Okay.
stop. You can't even keep your lies straight.
Police press Wozniak for the truth, and after another hour in the hot seat, he maintains he had nothing to do with the murder. He only helped Sam get away after Julie was already dead.
All right, you don't have anything else to tell us. We're going to bring you to jail.
And they took Wozniak to a cell, and they let him call Rachel Buffett, his fiancée.
This call is being recorded and may be...
Hello?
Hi, baby.
Hey, what's going on? What do you want me to do?
I don't know. Leave me.
And there's a whole exchange between the two of them where, in effect, he says, I didn't kill anybody. I helped Sam get away. That's all I did.
You talked to my parents?
I talked to your parents, and my mom's working on canceling all the wedding plans now, and I just talked to Tim, and I need to make a phone call to the detective now.
Why?
Because Tim's involved.
Tim is Wozniak's older brother.
I said, I'm going to the police station right now. Danny's been arrested. He starts freaking out, and something slips that he had evidence. So I have to...
No, don't. That can't be found. I don't want you to tell the detective anything, and I don't want Tim involved like that. I mean, now I'm dead. Now I'm really dead.
Baby, you're already dead.
At the end of that conversation, Wozniak alerted detectives that he had more that he wanted to say.
You said you wanted to talk to me. What's going on?
I'm crazy and I did it.
You did what?
I killed Julie and I killed Sam.
"14 hours after his arrest, Daniel Wozniak comes clean, telling Costa Mesa police he killed Julie Kibuishi and Sam Hare.
Sam came first. It was all just about the money.
Wozniak goes on to explain that these murders had been placed in action months and months before this.
Daniel Wozniak was friends with Sam and also Julie because Dan and Rachel, their apartment was very close to Sam's apartment. Sam trusted him. And Sam Hare, he had $62,000 in a bank account in hard-earned combat pay. And that became known to Daniel Wozniak. And one of the things that they learned over the course of the investigation was that Daniel Wozniak was in pretty dire financial straits. He had been served with an eviction notice. He wasn't working. It did not appear that his fiancée, Rachel Buffett, had been working, and they were struggling financially. And so he hatched this plot to get at Sam Hare's combat pay.
The motive behind killing Sam was?
Money and insanity.
Okay.
And it seemed so easy.
Why did you feel you had to kill Julie? What was the rationale behind that?
To cover up Sam. And so
how would that cover up Sam?
To make it look like he was on the run and he did.
He was the one that did it.
Right.
What Wozniak tells detectives is that he got Sam's ATM PIN number. We don't know how he got the PIN number, but Wozniak is a weaselly dude who Sam trusted. And I'm sure he turned his back on him at an ATM. And then he lured Sam to the Liberty Theater at the Los Alamitos military base.
I told him that I needed to move some stuff from the theater.
Mm-hmm. Is that when you took him over to the theater?
Yes. I went upstairs and then said, well, we need to move something from the attic.
And?
I said, you need to bend down and help me lift this thing up. And when he bent down, I grabbed the gun. I shot him using my father's gun that I had.
He describes how he took his wallet, took his car keys.
You took the ATM card from him?
And his wallet and his passport.
And then he describes how he took his cell phone, posing as Sam. He sent a text message to Julie.
I got her into the apartment on false pretexts.
How did you do that?
I got Sam's cell phone and was text messaging her while I was at the theater.
He asked Julie to come over, which Julie does, so further sets Wozniak's plan into place.
I got her into the hallway.
What did you say to Julie?
Like, Sam just called me and he was going through some stuff. She said, yeah, me too. I said, well, I have a key, let's go in. I opened the door, I let us in. And then said, oh, by the way, did you see this in Sam's bed? And she's like, what? It was like he was really freaking out over it. I said, lean over, look at it right there. When she was leaned over, I put 2 bullets in the back of her head.
And what was the reason behind pulling her pants down?
Trying to make it look like it was Sam getting mad. I thought that was my escape.
I mean, he's very clearly a psychopath. Part of this personality disorder is you don't experience the normal emotions that make us human, like guilt, shame, remorse. This monster not only set out to kill an innocent person for his personal gain, he had no problem creating a plan that required a second murder, because he doesn't care.
As he described what he had done to detectives, it also got far more gruesome.
Sam is decapitated in the theater. If you go up the ladder from the theater, his head and hands have been decapitated.
Okay, are the body parts there?
No.
Where are they?
The head, the hands, and the arm are in the nature center in El Dorado Park. In various locations, I don't remember.
Buried?
Just on the surface, I don't remember where.
And the torso is
the
where?
The torso is in the theater.
In the theater?
Upstairs.
Upstairs. How'd you do the decapitation?
With an axe I was on.
Okay, and where are those implements at?
They're in the backyard of the Buffetts.
In the backyard of the family. Rachel Buffett, his fiance.
No one knew anything. I made up excuses about I was going to work or I was going here. This was all me, 100%.
For him to be able to pull this much violence off, there is a level of desensitization, a level of inhumanity that really screams serial killer.
I was notified that he'd confessed and that he'd provided a location for the body of Sam Hare. So at that point, detectives went to the Liberty Theater. And when they got up there, sure enough, there he was. And then there was this arboretum in Long Beach where then police had to go on a search for Sam Hare's head and his right and left hands, which they find. Meanwhile, Rachel Buffett called detectives about evidence in the possession of Tim. The investigation revealed that after the murder of Sam Hare, Wozniak had given his brother Tim this backpack full of evidence. And Tim was supposed to get rid of it, and he looked in it, and basically what he did is he took it to his parents' house and threw it over the fence. So the detectives went to serve a search warrant on Wozniak's parents' home, and on the other side of the fence, there was a backpack which was a cornucopia of evidence. Inside were bloody clothes belonging to Sam Herr, Sam's wallet, his ID, shell casings from both murder scenes. The firearm was missing, but it was everything you could ask for as a prosecutor to prove that this guy committed these murders.
Police also retrieved the axe and saw from the Buffett residence. And as investigators worked to obtain additional search warrants for Daniel's apartment and his electronic devices, they must also share the tragic news with Sam Herr's family.
When the police came over and told us that Sam had been murdered, I suspected that. Raquel lost it. My wife lost it. And then the police said Sam was dismembered. I lost it then. Nothing in this world, you want anger, you really want to hate somebody, you hate somebody for doing something like that. I'll carry that for the rest of my life.
While Sam's family grapples with their loss, detectives turn their attention to Daniel's laptop, searching for hard proof of premeditation.
You can literally read his mind through Google, because he would go from things like, how loud is a gunshot? Particular caliber of bullet. And then it would go to, what are the best honeymoons in Mexico? You know, what cruise lines? What vacations are great for actors? So it'd literally be from like, how do I accomplish this killing, to bitchin' honeymoon ideas. So it's just, it's sick.
For an extended period of time prior to Julie and Sam's murder, Wozniak had months and months to plan this out, premeditatedly looking into the computer.
Daniel Wozniak is a psychopath, but he's a very interesting kind. Every 1 out of 100 people is a psychopath, and that's an unpopular thing for me to say, because many people associate psychopathy with crime. Nope. Most of them are not criminal. They're goal-driven, very different. So if your goal is not criminal, then you become a pro-social psychopath, and they are everywhere. That's who he was before his goal became a lavish wedding and a lavish honeymoon.
Wozniak is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and the district attorney decides to seek the death penalty. But then the case takes an unexpected turn.
Wozniak has pleaded not guilty.
They were saying that I shot both of them. It's not true.
Five and a half years after the senseless killings, Daniel Wozniak stands trial for the murders of Julie Kibuishi and Sam Herr. Despite his initial confession, Wozniak pleads not guilty and now faces the death penalty.
He confessed. We had a myriad of evidence, and it should have been over immediately. But then he said he was not guilty. So we went to a trial.
Although Wozniak claimed innocence to the media, it's soon clear he lacks an adequate defense. But his hope is to avoid the death penalty.
In California, capital cases are bifurcated. So what that means is there's a guilt phase of a trial, and there's a penalty phase of a trial. And the defense didn't want to waste a lot of credibility on the guilt phase because we had a full-blown confession top to bottom.
The defense put up no defense. They pretty much said, yeah, he did the murder.
The trial lasts 5 days, and the jury quickly reaches a verdict.
Within 2 hours, the jury found Dan Wozniak guilty of first-degree murder. And then they have another mini-trial. And that mini-trial encompasses, should he get the death penalty or life without parole?
The jury had heard everything they needed and came back with what I believe to be the correct verdict.
It is the order of this court that you shall suffer the death penalty.
Gave me some solace. Huge relief. Weight is off our shoulders.
This was absolutely among the worst, most depraved, evil murders I ever prosecuted in my 26 years as a DA.
There's no word to describe our pain and anger and frustration we have been going through.
My only regret that in this state,
won't let me kill this coward myself.
With the sentencing of Daniel Wozniak complete, those who aided and abetted his crimes also face their day in court.
Investigators looked very closely at Rachel Buffett, and what they were able to determine was that she had lied to detectives about this mystery man in the hat and the black Mazda. In a murder case, it's a crime to provide false information, especially when that is corroborating the story of your fiancé who's committed 2 horrific murders. So she was prosecuted separately as an accessory after the fact, and she was convicted of that.
Found guilty of covering up a depraved double murder committed by her fiancé.
Wozniak's older brother. Tim, he was, it should be noted, was totally cooperative with us, and he went up testifying against his brother, which isn't an easy thing for anybody to do, but he was charged criminally and he was prosecuted as an accessory after the fact to murder. Wesley Freilich was never charged and he was never tried because he was a juvenile. He was a victim in this. He was another person whose life is negatively affected by everything that Daniel Wozniak did.
Julie and Sam had so much potential. They gave up their lives thinking they were helping a friend. Sam thought he was helping Dan Wozniak. He got killed for that. Julie thought she was helping Sam, and she got murdered for that. Finding Julie's body in Sam's apartment and finding out that Sam had died were the hardest things in my life. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
I miss how full of life Julie was. She had the biggest smile. I always say she had the biggest heart.
Being a veteran, Sam was entitled to a military funeral with full military honors.
It was beautiful to see how the military had honored him that day. Sammy, I think, would have been proud of that too.
I go to the cemetery every week. I go there and I sit there for anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour. Every week when I do leave, I'll say, "Love you, Sammy, I'll see you next week." And it gives me a lot of solace. It's there, it's my time with Sam. I'm with my boy as best as I can be.
Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Dell hesitated. His fine art knowledge was largely based on things he'd seen on the back of biscuit tins. "I'll use my LS," Dell said. "I'll call my brother, Rodney. He's a scholar. He's got to GCEs." The phone rang in the flat. Rodney picked it up, thinking it was Mickey Pierce playing another prank. "Piss off, Mickey," Rodney shouted. "Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross." Doe's voice came through, frantic. "I need the answer. The opera, Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo." Rodney froze. The pressure was immense. "Ravel. It's Ravel, Dell, 100%. He says Ravel," Dell told the studio. The audience held its breath. Jonathan Ross looked at the card. "I'm sorry, Derek. That was the wrong answer. It was Rodrigo." The silence in the flat was deafening. Dell's face on the screen went from golden hope to gray despair. He had lost everything. Again. Chapter 8, The Final Twist. Dell returned to the flat late that night, his velvet blazer looking limp. "I was so certain," Rodney moaned, head in his hands. "I could have sworn it was Ravel. Ravel makes shoes, you dipstick." Dell snapped, though his heart wasn't in it. "You've upset Raquel. You've upset the nation. I'm going to be the most embarrassed man in Britain." Just then, the phone rang. "Don't answer it," Del said. "It'll be Mickey Pierce." "I'll get it," Raquel said. She picked it up, listened for a moment, and her eyes went wide. "Del, it's the producer of Gold Rush." Del took the phone, his expression cynical. "Yeah, what do you want?" "The podium. I'll pay for the damage when I'm back on my feet." Then he stopped. He listened. His eyes began to twinkle. "No, really, a mistake. It was Ravel." He looked at Rodney. He looked at the family. He says there was a mistake in the research. Ravel did write it. I can take the 50,000 pounds and come back for the final." The room erupted. Rodney jumped up, knocking over a lamp. Raquel hugged Del. "I knew it," Rodney shouted. "I knew my GCEs wouldn't let me down." Del laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated Peckham joy. He looked out the window at the dark towers of the estate. "See, Rodney, what did I tell you? This time next NCM, we really will be millionaires." Chapter 9, The Verification of a Miracle. The morning after the phone call from the BBC felt different. Usually, the sunrise over Peckham was greeted by the screech of a distant police siren or the aggressive rattling of a neighbor's milk bottles. But today, for Derek Trotter, the light filtered through the thin curtains of Nelson Mandela House like a celestial spotlight. "Raquel, where's my good tie?" Del shouted from the bedroom, the sound muffled by a mouthful of toothpaste. "The one with the silk weave. I can't go back to Television Center looking like a casual laborer." Raquel walked in, holding a steaming mug of tea and looking more skeptical than a tax inspector at an offshore bank. "Del, are you sure this wasn't a prank? You know what Mickey Pierce is like. He once convinced Denzel he'd won a trip to space." Del paused his frantic search through a drawer full of mismatched socks and knockoff watches. Mickey Pierce doesn't have the vocal range of a BBC producer. "Raquel, this was official. He said the researchers got their knickers in a twist. Ravel wrote the music, and apparently the Opera l'Enfant at Les Sortilèges is his masterpiece. Rodney was right for once in his life. God knows how, but he was right." Rodney appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his managing director suit, which still smelled faintly of mothballs. "I told you, Del, I studied the French Impressionists for my GCE. Well, I read the back of an album cover in a charity shop. But it counts. My executive intuition is back online." "Yeah, well, don't get too big for your boots, Rogers," Del snorted, finally finding his tie under a pile of independent tax forms. "One correct answer doesn't make you Einstein. Now, we need to verify this. If I turn up at the studio and it is Mickey Pierce, I'll have to move to the coast just to escape the shame." The verification process involved a tense 20 minutes on the phone. Del spoke in his most cultured voice, the one he usually reserved for wine waiters and debt collectors. By the time he hung up, he was beaming. It's on. Proof. Next Thursday, the grand final. 100,000 pounds is back on the table. But as the initial euphoria began to settle, a shadow passed over the room. It was the shadow of a very large, very persistent debt. Del, Rodney said quietly, looking at the mountain of paperwork on the sideboard. 50,000 covers the inland revenue, but if you win the 100, that's the house. That's a new life for Damien. That's Cassandra and me finally getting our own place. Del nodded, his expression uncharacteristically serious. I know, Rodney, this isn't just about trading anymore. It's about survival. We've been up and we've been down. But this time, we're playing for the championship. Chapter 10, Executive Stress and the Nag's Head Summit. The news of Dul's reprieve spread through Peckham like a wildfire in a firework factory. By the time the brothers arrived at the Nag's Head that evening, the celebration was already in full swing despite the fact that they hadn't actually won the final yet. Oi, oi, here he is. Boyke's voice cut through the smoke and the clinking of glasses. He was leaning against the bar, his wife Marlene looking spectacular in a leopard print coat that probably cost more than the Trotter's van. The man who knew more than the BBC, or rather, the man whose brother stumbled upon the truth by accident. It wasn't an accident. Boyke, Rodney insisted, adjusted his glasses. It was a calculated retrieval of stored knowledge. Retrieval. Boyke laughed, a dry, wheezing sound. I've heard you retrieve information before, Rodney, like the time you told us the Great Wall of China was built to keep the Scots out. That was a long time ago. Rodney snapped. Leave him alone, Boyke, Marlene said, leaning over to peck Del on the cheek. I'm proud of you. Del, you've had a rough time of it lately. If anyone deserves a bit of luck, it's you lot. Del ordered a round of succulent drinks, mostly pineapple juice for himself, as he was in training for the final. Thanks, Marlene. It's been a long road, but the tide is turning. I can feel it in my bones. It's like the changing of the seasons and the tides of the sea. You sound like a bad Hallmark card, Del. Sid grumbled from behind the bar. Just make sure you don't kick the podium over this time. The BBC sent me a letter asking for your address to bill you for repairs. Tell them I've moved to the Sultan of Brunei's palace. Del winked. Trigger wandered over, holding a pint of bitter and looking more confused than usual. All right, Del, I heard you're going back on the telly. Are you going to be on the bill? I like the one with the sirens. No, Trig, the quiz show. Gold Rush. Oh, well, if you see that Jonathan Ross, tell him I hear voices. He might give me a job in the audience. As the night wore on, the weight of expectation began to press down on Del. It wasn't just the money. It was the pride. The Trotter name had been dragged through the bankruptcy courts. They had been the laughingstock of the estate, Winning this wasn't just about the cash. It was about the comeback. "You okay, Del?" Rodney asked as they walked back to the van later that night. "Yeah, Rodney. Just thinking. We've had a lot of this time next year's, haven't we? This might actually be the one." "It will be, Del. Just don't mention King Edward when they ask about potatoes this time." Chapter 11. The Final Countdown. The week leading up to the final was a blur of executive preparation. Rodney had taken his role as managing director to heart, creating a revision schedule for Del that involved everything from the history of the Ottoman Empire to the chemical composition of a digestive biscuit. "Rodney, I'm a trader, not a university professor," Del complained, throwing a book on Greek mythology onto the sofa. "I don't need to know who the god of thunder was. I just need to know how to spot a bargain." "Knowledge is power, Del," Rodney replied, pacing the room with a clipboard. "If they ask you a question about the Parthenon, you can't just say it's a Greek restaurant in Streatham." Meanwhile, Cassandra and Raquel were dealing with their own executive stress. "I'm worried about them, Raquel," Cassandra whispered as they sat in the kitchen, watching the brothers argue in the living room. Rodney's so focused on this managing director thing, he's starting to believe his own hype. And Del looks tired. Raquel nodded, stirring a pot of stew. "He is tired, Cassandra. He's been carrying this family for 30 years. He thinks if he wins this, he can finally rest. But men like Del don't know how to rest. They just find a bigger deal to chase." Thursday arrived with a torrential downpour that seemed to mock the title of the show. There was no gold in the sky over London today, only slate gray clouds. The drive to Television Center was silent. Rodney gripped the steering wheel of the Capri, which Del had let him drive for morale purposes, his knuckles white. Del sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the passing city. "You ready, Del?" "Ready as I'll ever be, Rodney. Just remember, if I get stuck, I'm calling you. And don't you dare mention Mickey Pierce." The studio was even more intimidating the second time around. The audience was packed, the cameras were buzzing, and Jonathan Ross looked even more polished than before. "Welcome back to Gold Rush," Jonathan announced, the applause echoing in the rafters. "And a very special welcome back to the man of the hour, the man who proved the researchers wrong, Derek Trotter." Del walked out, his velvet blazer gleaming under the studio lights. He looked at the camera, flashed his most winning smile, and for a moment, the bankruptcy, the tax debt, and the hiccups didn't exist. He was Del Boy. He was the king of Peckham, and he was here to claim his throne. Chapter 12. The 100,000-pound question. The round-by-round progression was a masterclass in Trotter luck. Del navigated the questions about 16th century art thanks to a tip from a man who sold frames in Lewisham and the history of wine, which he knew by taste, if not by date. By the time he reached the final stage, the tension in the room was palpable. Raquel and Cassandra were clutching each other in the front row. Rodney was standing in the wings, his heart beating like a drum. "This is it, Derek," Jonathan said, the lights dimming until only the gold path was illuminated. "You have 50,000 pounds in the bank. You can walk away now, pay your debts, and live a comfortable life. Or you can answer the final question for 100,000 pounds. The audience was silent. Del looked at Raquel. He saw the hope in her eyes. He looked at Rodney. He saw the brother who had stood by him through every failed scheme and every empty promise. "I've spent my life walking away from things when they got too hot, Jonathan," Del said, his voice steady. "But not today. We're trotters. We don't walk. We trade. Let's have the question." The audience erupted. Jonathan Ross waited for the silence to return. "For 100,000 pounds, here is your question. In the world of maritime history, the phrase the ancient mariner refers to a famous poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. But what was the specific name of the ship the mariner sailed upon?" The room went cold. Dole's mind raced. Ships, maritime history, Uncle Albert. During the war, he could hear Albert's voice, the stories he'd dismissed as wartime sagas, the hours spent listening to the old man drone on about the sea. "I know this," Del whispered. "I actually know this." He thought of the funeral, the wrong funeral for Bunny Warren. He thought of the monogram brandy glass. He thought of the man who had been around the world more times than a Russian satellite. "It's not a trick," Del muttered to himself. "It's a memory." He looked at the camera. "Jonathan, the ship didn't have a name. It was just a ship, but the poem describes it as a specter bark or a ghost ship. However, if you're looking for the name of the vessel that Coleridge based the story on, it was a ship called the Fortune." The silence stretched. Rodney was holding his breath so hard he was turning blue. Jonathan Ross looked at the card. He looked at Del. He smiled. "Derek Trotter, that is absolutely correct. You've won 100,000 pounds." The explosion of noise was deafening. Raquel and Cassandra charged onto the stage. Rodney followed, hugging Del with a force that nearly knocked both of them over. "You did it, Del. You actually did it." Del stood in the middle of the chaos, the golden confetti falling around him like rain. He was laughing, crying, and shouting all at once. "See, Rodney, what did I tell you? This time next year. No, wait, this year. We're millionaires." Chapter 13, The Morning After the Gold. The return to Peckham was not in a yellow van, but in a chauffeur-driven limousine provided by the BBC. As they pulled up to Nelson Mandela House, a crowd of neighbors had gathered. Denzel was there, Trigger was waving a broom, and even Boyke looked genuinely impressed. But as the party in the flat began to wind down, reality started to creep back in. The check arrives in 30 days, Rodney said, sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator. $50,000 to the inland revenue, $10,000 for the legal fees. That leaves us with $40,000. $40,000, Dell asked, pouring a very large cognac. That's a lot of money, Rodney. It's not $6 million, but it's a start. We can move. We can get you that house. Rodney looked at Cassandra. She smiled and shook her head. Dell, she said, taking a seat. We talked about it. Rodney and we don't want to move yet. We want to use the money to restart the firm. Properly this time. No knockoff watches. No exploding dolls. A real consultancy. Dell looked at them, surprised. Restart the firm. Under Rodney's management? Yes, Rodney said, his voice firm. Managing Director Rodney Trotter. But I'm going to need a chairman. Someone with experience. Someone who knows how to close a deal. Dell felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Raquel, who was holding Damien as he slept on the sofa. Chairman Derek Trotter, Dell whispered. I like the sound of that. It's got laboratory Garney. Race on Deatter, Dell, Rodney corrected gently. Whatever. They sat in the quiet of the flat, the neon sign of the estate flickering outside. They weren't millionaires anymore. The gold from the studio had already been accounted for by the ghosts of their past mistakes. But for the first time in years, they weren't running. They were standing still, and they were together. You know, Rodney, Dell said, looking at a photo of their mum on the mantel. I think she'd be proud. We kept our promise. We stuck together. Yeah, Dell, we did. But listen, Dell leaned in, his eyes sparking with that old familiar fire. I was talking to the driver of that limo on the way home. He knows a bloke in Croydon who's got a consignment of slightly damp, but perfectly functional, industrial-sized fans. With the summer coming up, we could make a killing. Dell, Rodney groaned. No, listen, it's a guaranteed winner this time next year. As the lights of Nelson Mandela House faded into the night, the dream lived on. Because in the world of the Trotters, the goalpost might move, and the millions might vanish, but the hustle the beautiful, chaotic, hopeful hustle would never die. Chapter 14, The Executive Suite. The new official headquarters of Trotters Independent Traders Phase 2 was, as Rodney put it, a work in progress. In reality, it was still the living room of Nelson Mandela House, but with a few significant alterations. Rodney had insisted on buying a second-hand mahogany desk that was so large it required the removal of the sofa to fit into the corner. It commands respect, Dell, Rodney said, adjusting his swivel chair, which squeaked with every movement. When a client walks in, hypothetically speaking, they need to see a man of stature, a man of administration. Dell, leaning against the sideboard with a toothpick in his mouth, looked at the desk and then at Rodney. Rodney, you look like a primary school kid who's accidentally wandered into the headmaster's office. And where am I supposed to sit? On the floor. You're the chairman, Dell. You're Smobel. You're the face of the company in the field. You're the outreach. The outreach? That's a fancy word for the bloke who carries the boxes, isn't it? Dell snorted. Anyway, never mind the mahogany. Have you seen the fans? The fans, all 200 of them, were currently occupying the balcony, covered by a suspicious-looking tarp. They were the industrial-sized units Dell had mentioned, and they did indeed smell faintly of canal water. We need a marketing strategy, Rodney, Dell said, his eyes lighting up. I've been thinking. Trotter's Turbo Chill. It sounds modern. It sounds aerodynamic. Dell, we agreed. Proper consultancy. We're not selling damp fans from the balcony. Rodney slammed his hand on the desk, only to wince as a splinter caught his palm. We're supposed to be advising businesses on efficiency and growth. And what's more efficient than a workforce that isn't sweating like a glassblower's bottom? Dell shot back. I've already made a call. There's a warehouse in Deptford. Their air conditioning has gone caput, and the foreman is a bloke I know called Greasy George. He's desperate. Rodney sighed, the managing director's facade cracking slightly. Greasy George, does he have a legitimate business license? He's got a van and a clipboard, Rodney. In Peckham, that's a conglomerate. Come on, put your executive suit on. We're going to do a deal. Chapter 15, The Great Fan Fiasco. The Deptford warehouse was a corrugated iron oven. Inside, 30 men were moving crates while the air shimmered with heat. Greasy George, a man whose forehead was permanently slick with perspiration, greeted them with the desperation of a drowning man. Dell, thank God. It's 90 degrees in here and the union is threatening to walk out. George wiped his face with a rag that looked like it had been used to clean an engine. Don't you worry, George, Dell said, draping an arm around him. The chairman and the managing director have arrived. Rodney, show him the brochure. Rodney reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper with Trotter's Turbo Chill written in felt tip pen. These are high output, industrial grade circulation units, Mr. George, designed for maximum atmospheric displacement. Will they cool the place down? George asked. Cool it. Dell laughed. George, by the time we've got these beauties humming, your blokes will be asking for thermal underwear. They're that powerful. They spent the next 3 hours hauling the fans from the van into the warehouse. As Rodney plugged the first unit in, he looked at the label on the back. It was in a language that looked vaguely Cyrillic. Dell, these fans, they're from 1974, and they're marked military surplus. Even better, Rodney, Army quality, built to last. Rodney flipped the switch. There was a low, guttural growl. like a hungry wolf. Then a screech that set every tooth in the warehouse on edge. Suddenly, the fan blades began to spin with terrifying velocity. A blast of air cool, but smelling strongly of old fish and diesel erupted from the unit. "See!" Dell shouted over the noise. "Total displacement." Greasy George looked impressed. "I'll take the lot. 100 quid each?" George, Dell sighed, shaking his head. "For a friend, 120, and that's because I like your face." They shook on it as the trotters drove away. Rodney was already doing the math in his head. 24,000 pounds. Dell, that's almost, well, after the cost of the fans, that's a 15,000-pound profit in a single afternoon. "Told you, didn't I, Rogers?" Dell beamed, slapping the dashboard of the Capri. "The chairman knows his onions." But then Rodney looked in the rearview mirror. A cloud of black smoke was rising from the Diptford warehouse. "Dell, why is George's warehouse smoking?" "It's just the dust, Rodney. The fans are so powerful, they're clearing the decades of grime. It's a cleaning service as well. We should have charged him more." Chapter 16, The Legacy. They didn't go back to the warehouse. They didn't answer the phone for 3 days. Apparently, the military surplus fans had a slight design flaw where the motors would overheat if run for more than 10 minutes, and the turbochill had eventually turned into a turboflam. Fortunately, Greasy George had managed to douse the small fires with a fire extinguisher before any real damage was done. But the deal was definitely off. "At least we got the deposit," Dell muttered, sitting on the balcony as the sun set. "We had to give it back, Dell," Rodney said, standing beside him. "And we had to pay for George's eyebrows to be professionally trimmed since the sparks took most of them off." They stood in silence, looking out over the flickering lights of the city. The 40,000 pounds was still in the bank, safe and sound. The Phase 2 office was currently being used by Damien to build a fortress out of cardboard boxes. "You know, Rodney," Dell said, his voice soft, "we're not millionaires. We're probably never going to be millionaires again. Not the real kind, anyway." "I know, Dell. But look at us. We've got the flat. We've got the family. We've even got a managing director who knows how to use a stapler." Dell looked at his brother and smiled. "We're the luckiest blokes in Peckham." Rodney looked at the yellow van parked in the lot below. It looked small and battered, but it was there. "Yeah, I suppose we are. But listen," Dell said, his eyes beginning to sparkle again. "I was talking to a bloke in the pub today. He's got a connection in Singapore. Apparently, there's a surplus of slightly mislabeled, but perfectly edible, canned ham. With Christmas coming up, we could." "Dell!" "No, listen, it's a gold mine, Rodney. This time next year." The argument faded into the night air. A familiar melody that had echoed through the halls of Nelson Mandela House for decades. The millions might have come and gone, and the deals might have sizzled out, but as long as the sun rose over Peckham, the trotters would be there trading, laughing, and dreaming of the next big win. Bon mot. The yellow van might be old, and the engine might cough, but as long as there's a road ahead and a deal to be made, the trotters will always be driving, because they're not just traders, they're survivors. And in the heart of Peckham, that's the greatest fortune of all. The Trotter Chronicles, From Gold to Grit, a novelization by Gemini. Prologue, The Man in the Sharp Suit. The air in the office was thick with the scent of expensive mahogany and the faint, clinical aroma of high-end air purifiers. Justin, a man whose skin looked like it had been buffed by a professional at a Swiss spa, leaned back in his leather chair. He adjusted his glasses, looking at the two men sitting across from him. One of them, Derek Delboy Trotter, was a man who looked like he belonged in a very different kind of office one, with a calendar of a local garage on the wall and the lingering smell of cigar smoke and hopeful desperation. Del was dressed in what he considered his business best, a suit that shimmered just a bit too much under the fluorescent lights, and enough gold jewelry to make a pirate blush. Next to him sat Rodney, younger, leaner, and perpetually looking like he had just realized he'd left the oven on at home. Rodney was sweating, not the confident sweat of an athlete, but the cold, clammy moisture of a man who knew his brother was about to say something that would embarrass them both for the next century. "I've got all the basic details about your business career," Justin began, his voice smooth and devoid of any Peckham grit. "But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you, how you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre." Del Boy's eyes lit up. He didn't know what a raison d'etre was, but it sounded French, and in Del's world, French meant class. "Oh, no," Del whispered to Rodney, "Laboratory Garney." Rodney closed his eyes and prayed for the floor to open. "It's not Laboratory Garney. Del," he hissed, "he's asking for our reason for being." "Exactly what I said. Prove," Del snapped back, before turning to Justin with a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo and then charge him for the delivery. "Well, Justin, where shall I start? Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living, well, very ordinary lives, weren't we, Rodney?" And so the story began. A story of a watch found in a garage, a fortune made in an instant, and a fall so spectacular it made the Hindenburg look like a minor fender bender. Chapter 1, The Caribbean Dream. The sun over Barbados didn't just shine, it announced itself. It turned the turquoise water into a sheet of diamonds and the white sand into something so bright it hurt to look at without designer sunglasses, which, of course, the trotters were wearing. Only a few months prior, the Trotters had been living in a council flat in Peckham, wondering if the hooky VCers they were selling would last through the first reel of Rambo. Then came the watch, an 18th century Harrison marine chronometer hidden in their garage for decades. It had sold at Sotheby's for £6.5 million. In an instant, Derek Trotter, the man who once sold one-legged turkeys at Christmas, was a multimillionaire. "Look at this, Rodney," Dell had said, leaning over the balcony of their private villa. He was holding a glass of something blue with a miniature umbrella in it. "Total luxury. This is what we were born for. Mange tout, Rodney, mange tout." Rodney was sitting in a hammock, trying to read a book on sociology, but failing because Cassandra kept applying sun cream to his back. "It's a bit much, isn't it, Dell? I mean, 6 months ago we were sharing a bathroom with a leak that Uncle Albert called characterful. Characterful. It was a health hazard," Dell laughed. "But look at us now. We've divvied the dosh up. We made sure Uncle Albert got a nice little drink, figuratively speaking, though knowing him, he's probably literally drinking most of it down on the coast with Elsie Partridge. They had been the kings of the island. They donated to charity mostly because Dell liked the gala dinners, and they invested. Oh, how they invested. Dell had met a man in a bar, a visionary, Dell called him. A con artist, Rodney had countered. The man spoke of Central American markets, of vibrant ventures, and emerging economies. He spoke of turning millions into billions. It was a royal mint. "Rodney," Dell shouted into the tropical wind, "we were making money while we slept. But the Caribbean sun has a way of blinding you to the clouds on the horizon." Chapter 2. The Sound of the Crash. The end didn't come with a bang. It came with a phone call and a decline message on a credit card at a 5-star hotel. "What do you mean, insufficient funds?" Dell had barked at the hotel manager, his gold rings clacking against the marble countertop. "Do you know who I am? I'm Derek Trotter. I've got more money than the Sultan of Brunei's paperboy." The manager was polite but firm. The Central American market hadn't just dipped, it had evaporated. A coup, a currency collapse, and a series of creative accounting errors by their visionary friend had turned the Trotter fortune into a pile of worthless digital ash. "Rodney," Dell whispered, his face turning a shade of gray that matched the London fog they had tried so hard to escape. "The negotiations, they've collapsed." Collapsed? Rodney felt his stomach drop. "Dell, we put everything into that venture. The houses, the stocks, the peacocks." I know," Dell said, his bravado finally cracking. "We've even paid for this hotel on a credit card. A credit card which has now been withdrawn." The journey back to the UK was a blur of cramped airplane seats and the crushing realization that the dream was over. They weren't returning to a hero's welcome. They were returning to a financial wilderness. And it wasn't just them. Back in Peckham, the ripples of their failure were turning into waves. Michael Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head and a man who had trusted Dell with his life savings, was now behind bars. He had remortgaged the pub to follow the Trotter gold mine, and when it collapsed, he had tried to recoup the losses by embezzling from the brewery. He was a desperate man, and Dell felt the weight of every brick in Mike's prison cell. Chapter 3, The Court of Peckham. The corridors of the courthouse felt like a tomb. Denzel, a man whose nerves were usually held together by habit and hope, was pacing so fast he was nearly burning a hole in the linoleum. "Denzel, sit down," Albert's voice echoed. Denzel stopped and looked at the group gathered. There was Trigger, looking as vacant as a Sunday morning in a library. There was Boyke, looking smug despite the circumstances. And there was Sid, the cafe owner, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I can't, Albert," Denzel groaned. "I've never been a character witness before. I'm worried. I think Dole's made a terrible mistake having us for here. It's like inviting the Manson family to dinner." "Don't be so dramatic," Trigger said, staring at a fly on the wall. "I'm going to tell them I hear voices." "Trigger, you're not the one on trial," Denzel hissed. "I know," Trigger replied simply, "but I still hear voices." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was even grimmer. The Inland Revenue was a beast that didn't care about mange tout or lovely jubbly. They wanted their pound of flesh, and they wanted it in sterling. Dell and Rodney stood before the judge. The properties were gone. The cars were gone. The peacocks had probably been repossessed by a very confused bailiff. "Are there any mitigating circumstances?" their lawyer asked. Dell stepped forward, adjusting his tie. "Oh, yes, you must remember to tell them that we were slaves to detail, wouldn't you, Rodney? We made certain that we always got our checks off to the Inland Revenue on time." "Always," Rodney added, his voice cracking. "Fair dues," Dell whispered as the judge looked down at them. "They bounced, but they was always on time." The verdict was swift. Bankruptcy. They weren't going to prison, not yet, but they were being stripped of everything. The debt stood at $48,750 for pounds. It was a number that haunted those dreams. It wasn't just money, it was the price of his pride. Chapter 4, The Wrong Gentleman. Amidst the financial ruins, a personal tragedy struck. Uncle Albert, the man who had survived the Battle of the Atlantic only to be nearly killed by those cooking 1,000 times, had passed away. The funeral was a somber affair, or it should have been. The Trotters arrived at the cemetery, faces long and hearts heavy. "I feel bad, you know," Dell whispered to Rodney as they walked toward the open grave. "Leaving him here on his own while we was all off globe-trotting." "He wasn't on his own, Dell," Rodney said. "He had Elsie. He was happy." They stood by the grave, listening to the vicar speak of a man named Bunny who had served in the RAF. Bunny. Dell frowned. Why did he call him Bunny? Well, that's what they called him in the RAF, didn't they? A stranger next to them whispered, because his surname was Warren. Dell froze. He looked at the headstone. He looked at the grieving widow, who was definitely not Elsie Partridge. He looked at the photo of the deceased man who looked remarkably like Albert, but was missing the signature during the war beard. Rodney, Dell hissed, his eyes wide. Is that a Spitfire on the coffin? Yeah, Rodney whispered back. We're at the wrong funeral. They retreated with the quiet dignity of two men who had just realized they were mourning a complete stranger. It was the perfect metaphor for their lives, showing up with good intentions only to realize they were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong dead relative. Chapter 5. New Management. Back at Nelson Mandela House, the flat felt smaller than it used to. The wallpaper was peeling, and the ghost of their millionaire lifestyle lingered in the form of a single, half-empty bottle of expensive cognac. The firm's been liquidated, Rodney said, staring at the kitchen table. Trotter's Independent Traders is no more. It's Capit. No, 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 Dell said, his mind racing. The firm can go on trading. It's just that I've been disqualified from running it. That doesn't mean to say I can't work for it. He looked at Rodney, really looked at him. We need a new managing director, Dell mused. Someone young, someone enthusiastic, someone full of ideas. Rodney looked around the room. Who? The window cleaner. No, Rodney, you. Rodney's jaw dropped. Me? Dell, I can't run a company. I can't even run a bath without getting a headache. Legally, there is nothing to stop you, Dell insisted. You're clean. No bankruptcy, no disqualification. You'd be the boss. Rodney Trotter, managing director. And so, the power dynamic shifted. Within days, the local paper carried a small advertisement, Trotter's Independent Traders, now under new management. Managing director, Rodney Trotter. Rodney took to the role with a terrifying level of seriousness. He started wearing a tie at breakfast. He spoke about executive stress and logistical paradigms. He even tried to listen to Mozart to unwind. Mozart's Symphony No. 38 in D major. Rodney explained to Trigger one evening in the flat. I find it helps me ease my executive stress. Trigger nodded slowly. Ain't there no words to this, Dave? No, Trigger, it's instrumental. Dell watched his brother with a mix of pride and annoyance. He was back in the game, even if he was technically just the staff. But the debt to the taxman still loomed. They needed a big score. They needed a miracle. And then the phone rang. Chapter 6, The Gold Rush. The studio lights were blinding. Jonathan Ross, a man who seemed to be made of charisma and expensive hair products, smiled at the camera. Welcome to Gold Rush, he announced, the fastest game show on TV. This is the show where you can win anything from £1 to 100,000 pounds. In the contestants' seat sat Derek Trotter. He had lied about his hobbies, claiming to love 16th century Italian Renaissance art instead of seeing what fell off the back of a lorry. And he had navigated the early rounds with the cunning of a street fox. He reached the final stages. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knockoff Swiss Army knife. For 50,000 pounds, Derek Jonathan Ross said, leaning in, which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Del felt the sweat prickling under his shimmery suit. He knew this, or he thought he knew it, but his brain was a jumble of French phrases and Peckham market prices. I'm going to have to use me old SOS, aren't I? Del said, his voice trembling. I'll call my brother, Rodney. Back at the flat, Rodney and Cassandra were dressed in their fantasy therapy outfits, Rodney as a gladiator and Cassandra as a police officer. It was supposed to be a quiet night of memory baggage unloading. The phone screamed. Hello, Rodney snapped, assuming it was their annoying neighbor, Mickey Pierce. Piss off, Mickey, you're getting on my tits now. Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross. The silence that followed was deafening. Rodney realized he had just told one of the most famous men in Britain to piss off. Rodney, we need your help, Jonathan said, hurried. Derek is on 25,000, going for 50. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Rodney didn't hesitate. He had to GCEs. He had been listening to Mozart for a week. He was an executive. Ravel, Rodney said with absolute certainty. 100%. Del, it's Ravel. Del turned back to the camera, his chest puffed out. I'll go with that, Jonathan. It's Ravel. Jonathan Ross looked at him with a face full of pity. Derek, that was the wrong answer. It was Rodrigo. The world seemed to stop spinning. Del's face went through every shade of red known to man. He had lost it all. Again. On national television. Chapter 7, The Phoenix of Peckham. The silence in the flat that night was heavy. Del sat on the sofa, still wearing his game show suit, staring at the floor. Raquel was in the kitchen, and Rodney was hiding in his room, probably trying to find a way to dismantle his gladiator armor without making a sound. The phone rang. If that's Mickey Pierce, Del growled, picking it up. I'm going to murder him. Hello, is this Derek Trotter? A voice asked. It sounded professional. This is the producer of Gold Rush. Del rolled his eyes. Oh, give it a rest, Mickey. I can hear the jukebox in the Nag's Head from here. No, Mr. Trotter. This is serious. We've made a mistake. Our researchers checked the facts. Ravel did write the music for The Child and The Enchantment. Even though he's a composer and not primarily a guitarist, The question was flawed. Del sat up straight. A mistake? You mean? I was right? You were right. We're offering you the 50,000 pounds, or the chance to come back and play for the 100,000. Del looked at the room. He looked at Rodney, who had peeked his head out of the bedroom door. He looked at Raquel, who was standing in the doorway with hope in her eyes. Give all the money to charity, Del shouted into the phone, his old bravado returning in a rush of adrenaline. And if you phone here once again, I'm going to come down there and kick your arse into shredded duck. Goodbye. He slammed the phone down. Del, Rodney screamed. What are you doing? That was 50 grand. Del started to laugh. A deep, wheezing Peckham laugh. It was Mickey Pierce, Rodney. I could hear the jukebox. He thought he could wind me up, but nobody winds up Derek Trotter. He stood up, adjusting his cuffs. We're the Trotters, Rodney. We don't need charity. We're back in business. New management, new ideas. This time next year. Rodney sighed, but he couldn't help but smile. We'll be millionaires? No, Del said, throwing an arm around his brother's shoulder. This time next year. We'll be debt-free. And that, Rodney, is bonjour. It's bonjour, Del, Rodney corrected. Exactly what I said. Prove exactly what I said. The neon sign of the Nags had flickered in the distance, a beacon of hope in the heart of Peckham. The Trotters were down, but they were never out. Because as long as there was a deal to be made and a brother to blame, the dream would never die. Chapter 8. The Cold Light of Day. The following morning did not bring the clarity Del Boy had hoped for. Instead, it brought a pounding headache and the lingering suspicion that he might have made a catastrophic tactical error. He sat at the formica table in the kitchen, nursing a mug of tea that was mostly sugar. Rodney stumbled in, looking disheveled. Del, Rodney said, his voice flat. I've been thinking about that phone call last night. Forget it, Rodney. Del snapped. Mickey Pierce, professional wind-up merchant, probably recorded the whole thing to play at the pub later. Low D toilet. Rodney. Water under the bridge. Del, I went to the pub this morning to get some milk because the fridge is on the blink again. And Mickey Pierce was there. He looked as miserable as a rainy Tuesday in Margate. Apparently, his latest business venture selling laser-cut toast just failed. He didn't even have enough credit on his phone to make a prank call. Del froze, his mug halfway to his lips. What? And there's more. Sid showed me the morning paper. There's a small headline on page 12. Game show blunder. BBC apologizes to Peckham contestant over classical music gaffe. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. You could hear the distant rumble of the 171 bus and the slow, rhythmic dripping of the leaky tap. So, Del whispered, his voice barely audible. It wasn't Mickey. It was the producer, Del. You told the BBC to give £50,000 to charity in the name of the Trotters. Del Boy put his mug down. He stared at the wall, at the framed picture of their mother. Well, he said, his voice suddenly bright and brittle, At least we'll get a plaque or a mention in the newsletter. It's tax deductible, ain't it? We don't pay tax, Del. We're bankrupt, Rodney shouted. Details, Rodney, details. Del stood up, pacing the small kitchen. This is just a temporary setback, a minor hiccup in the grand tapestry of Trotter fortunes. We're under new management. Remember, Managing Director Rodney Trotter. What's our first move, boss? Rodney looked at the pile of unpaid bills on the counter. Our first move is to find something to sell. Something that doesn't involve the Sultan of Brunei or the BBC. Chapter 9, The Electronic Revolution. Rodney's first official act as managing director was to meet with Monkey Harris. Monkey was a man who lived up to his name short, agile, and always looking for a way to climb a bit higher on the social ladder. He met Rodney in the back of a van parked behind the Nag's Head. I've got a consignment. Rodney, Monkey whispered, opening a cardboard box. Electronic personal organizers. Top of the range. They tell the time, store 500 names, and have a built-in calculator. They're selling like crazy in the West End. Rodney picked one up. It was a sleek, black plastic device that looked like something from a low-budget sci-fi movie. How much? For you. A tenner apiece. I've got 200 of them. Rodney calculated. 200 at 10 pounds was 2,000. If they sold them for 30, that was for £1,000 profit. It wasn't 50,000, but it was a start. I'll take them, Rodney said, trying to sound executive. But I'll need to pay in installments. Cash flow. You understand? Monkey nodded. I understand. Cash flow is the soul of business. I'll drop them off at Nelson Mandela House tonight. When Rodney returned to the flat, he found Del Boy trying to fix the washing machine with a bent coat hanger. Good news, Del. I've secured our first inventory. Electronic personal organizers. The future of business. We're going to modernize Peckham. One address book at a time. Del looked at the device. Electronic organizers. People round here can barely organize a trip to the toilet. Rodney. Who's going to buy these? Everyone. Busy professionals, students, anyone who needs to stay on top of their game. It's executive stress management, Del, chic. Jimem, Del said, his eyes narrowing. They look a bit plastic. Are they waterproof? Why would they need to be waterproof? In case it rains on the market stall. Rodney, think of Voyage du Pois. Chapter 10. Iconoclastic autosuggestion. While the business world was being revolutionized by plastic organizers, the domestic world of the Trotters was entering the realm of fantasy therapy. Cassandra had insisted. After the stress of the bankruptcy and the game show disaster, she felt their relationship needed a reboot. She had found a book by an American psychologist who spoke of memory baggage and the need to create our own make-believe world. Iconoclastic autosuggestion. Rodney explained to Del Boy while they were sorting the organizers. It's about rejecting reality and becoming different people, just for an evening. Sounds like what I've been doing for 40 years. Rodney, Del quipped. What's the catch? We write down our fantasy figures, and then we become them. No dressing up. It's all in the mind. But as with everything in the Trotter household, the no dressing up rule was the first to go. Thursday night arrived. Del had agreed to take Raquel and Damien out to see a film, giving Rodney and Cassandra the flat to themselves. Or so Rodney thought. I'm taking them to see that new cartoon, Del said, adjusting his coat, the one about the singing fish. We'll be back late. Enjoy your autosuggestion. Rodney waited until the door closed. He went to his bedroom and emerged 10 minutes later wearing a leather skirt, a plastic chest plate, and sandals. He looked like he had been rejected from a high school production of Spartacus. Cassandra emerged from the bathroom. She was wearing a police uniform, complete with a hat and a plastic truncheon. Rodney, she gasped. I thought we said no dressing up. I couldn't help it. Cass, the book said to fully immerse yourself. I'm Russell Crowe in Gladiator. And I'm a detective from the Bill. Cassandra sighed. You look different. Strength and honor, Cassandra, Rodney said, striking a pose that nearly caused his chest plate to pop off. Now, let us unload our baggage. They sat on the sofa, trying to be reborn, but the atmosphere was somewhat dampened by the smell of those lingering cigar smoke and the faint sound of the neighbors' heavy metal music. So, Rodney began, trying to deepen his voice. On my signal, unleash the feelings. Rodney, I don't feel like a detective. I feel like an idiot. That's just the memory baggage talking. Rejected. You are an officer of the law. I am a hero of Rome. Suddenly, the front door burst open. We're back, Del Boy shouted, stumbling in with Raquel and Damien. The cinema was full. Apparently, every kid in Peckham wants to see a singing fish. He stopped dead. He looked at Rodney. He looked at Cassandra. Oh, my God, Del whispered, his eyes widening. Rodney, what have you done to her? Is she arresting you? It's therapy. Del, Rodney hissed, trying to hide behind a cushion. Go away. Therapy? You look like you're about to fight a lion in a police station. Del started to laugh. A deep, wheezing sound. Raquel, come and see this. Russell Crowe and the Bill are having a meeting in our front room. The fantasy was officially over. Reality hadn't just returned. It had kicked the door down and started laughing at them. Chapter 11, the Sultan's shadow. A few days later, the executive stress was reaching a fever pitch. The organizers weren't selling as well as Rodney hoped, mostly because people in Peckham prefer to write their numbers on the back of cigarette packets. Rodney was sitting at the kitchen table, Mozart playing softly in the background, when the phone rang. Trotter's Independent Traders, Managing Director Rodney Trotter speaking, he said, trying to sound bored and important. Good evening, a voice said with a thick, exotic accent. I am wishing to speak with Managing Director. Rodney's eyes narrowed. This is he. Who is calling? My name is Asif Hazen. I am representative of Sultan of Brunei. Rodney rolled his eyes. He looked at Delboy, who was pretending to read the paper but was clearly listening. The Sultan of Brunei, Rodney repeated loudly. Well, how can I be of assistance, sir? His Highness has seen your advertisement in the newspaper. He is very impressed with your party planning and consultancy. Is he now?